to give you an opportunity to see whether slaughtering infidels on the road to holy martyrdom is right for you.
All Trump supporters, we are all going to be made targets of surveillance by an agency of our federal government that our taxes pay for. The left isn't even trying to hide their schemes anymore.
We now present ISIS and its militant radical Islamist worldview either evolved from a complex series of socioeconomic conditions and geopolitical decisions dating back generations, or it evolved because there is evil in the world.
So I am currently drafting a declaration of war against the Mexican cartels, and I'd like to challenge anyone in Washington that beats the drums of war and beats their chest about fighting Russia to wake up and realize the oath of office they took is to the United States and the American people and to defend our borders.
Invasion by invitation. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Couple of things that made me laugh and cry over the past few days. First, what made me laugh?
The anti-Semitism and pro-terrorism, what you're doing, the terrorism.
That's like when you're constipated, you suddenly get an ad for Metamucil, and you're like,
Border is not open. That is something that is peddled as a talking point, but it's not true. There are fences, there are walls.
I want to talk about the Fox rhetoric behind the Hamas terrorists are going to come in the Mexican border. If you tell these people that same thing enough times, they're liable to believe it.
It's almost like they're applying two entirely different standards, maybe even a double standard, or in Trump's case, a bacon double standard.
Covered the true roots of ISIS. One could consider centuries of Sunni-Shia warfare that in the mid-2000s culminated in the brutal subjugation of Sunnis by a U.S.-backed Shia Iraqi government.
The answer to the sleeper cell question is we don't know. We have no border. Hamas could send whoever they want. It's possible Hamas has hundreds or thousands of militants on the interior of the United States ready to bomb hospitals, blow up schools, or just rain terror.
Terrorists are likely pouring into America across our southern border, which Joe knows all about but refuses to do anything about. They're likely already here.
And you see what's going on with what Hamas is doing in Israel. Just stand by for that to happen in the United States of America.
Right after these terror attacks in Israel, I got several texts from Border Patrol agents essentially saying, I hope we're not next here in the U.S. because they have extreme concerns about what has been coming across our southern border.
Raided Israel are pouring into our once beautiful USA through our totally open southern border at record numbers. Are they planning an attack within our country? Crooked Joe Biden and his boss, Barack Hussein Obama, did this to us.
Well, the regime media is really working overtime for the big guy.
Should I be worried about the fact that increasingly large numbers of people on the terrorist watch list are slipping past our southern border while cries for international jihad grow louder?
I don't believe him. Take it from the Jewish space laser lady herself, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
What happened to Israel could happen to America because our country has been invaded by millions of people from over 160 countries.
Hamas must be destroyed and wiped from this earth. But stop lying to people about who they are, because you're liable to get a little boy killed.
Or the Biden team is clearing the border. No problem.
Or one could just say ISIS formed because there are bad guys out there. So, to combat ISIS, we should either strategically exploit their own fundamentalist worldview against them while taking care not to exacerbate the conditions that led to their rise in the first place.
When you hear Trump talk about the state of our school systems, it kind of starts to make sense.
So we have the worst education almost in the large world, the world that people know about.
Or just drop every bomb we've got on the enemies of freedom. The internet-savvy terrorist group knows that building an effective online presence is crucial to converting young people to jihadism.
So on one side of the river, you had a high-functioning civilization, ours, and on the other side, you had the third world. And the success of El Paso said everything about the superiority of the American system and American culture. But 2 years ago, Joe Biden set out to change that. It was an offense against equity. They were too different. But instead of fixing Juarez, he decided to destroy El Paso and make it much more like Juarez. To do that, the administration opened America's southern border to the world. Hundreds of thousands of foreign nationals streaming in, jobless, penniless, anonymous. What happened next? You know what happened next. The most predictable disaster in the world. Crime skyrocketed. Social cohesion collapsed. Test scores in local schools plummeted.
What the hell are these Republicans doing? And why is it, whether it's Republicans or Netanyahu's right-wing nutter government in Israel, why is it that Republicans always go after the wrong people?
Awful, horrible story out of Illinois today in LaGrange, just outside Chicago. Wadia Al-Fayyoumi, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy who was senselessly stabbed to death 26 times, was laid to rest today. Police say he and his mother were attacked on Saturday by their landlord, allegedly because they were Muslim. CNN's Whitney Wild has more on this horrific attack that's now being investigated as a federal hate crime.
Allahu Akbar.
6-year-old Wadia Al-Fayyoum, a Palestinian-American, laid to rest today.
He's a very kind kid. He likes to jump up and down. When he was dead, he was last words to his mom. Mom, I'm fine. You know what? He is fine. He's in a better place.
The boy died after he and his mother, Hanan Shaheen, were allegedly stabbed Saturday in the room they rented from 71-year-old Joseph Zuba, just outside Chicago.
Border, a problem with no end in sight. But remember, their answer for the problem is just more immigration. Just wave them all in, work permits, and soon a fast track to voting. Now, the gravity of this assault on our sovereignty and our rule of law, it's kind of hard to overstate.
It's hard to believe that people are dumb enough to believe this stuff.
It's a chilly December night in El Paso, Texas, and these migrants are homeless, camping on the streets, preparing for a night of bitter cold.
And has attracted thousands of followers with its popular website, www.reasonswhythewestisbad.com.
And the angle is using the term assault, by the way, for accuracy, not for hyperbole. Because remember, what we see unfolding at the border right now is not the result of a failed Biden policy. This is their policy. It's an invasion.
Sometimes his mouth just says things like a broken Furby or something.
Which notes 5 flaws of Western society, including the poor state of the American education system and the government's inability to get much done, has been highly successful at prompting young Westerners to join.
The landlord, in an act of hate, shouted the threats and unleashed violence.
The landlord appearing in court today while the boy's mother remains hospitalized, recovering from more than a dozen stab wounds. Zuba allegedly entered the room he rented to Shaheen and her son Saturday morning, stabbing the 6-year-old 26 times.
There's no Hamas in Mexico. I spent many a days in Juarez. Let me tell you, they would not survive. Hamas is not tough enough for Juarez.
As evidenced by testimonial videos posted online.
It's an invasion by invitation.
Friend sent me a link to the site and changed my life. We'd get together every day after school and talk about all of the 5 ways the West is bad. Now it must perish in flames.
Folks in Eagle Pass, Texas, they're reeling there. 4,000 from Friday through Sunday alone. Yeah, 4,000 migrants. So to get a sense of what this really means, a perspective here, remember, the Martha's Vineyard Bleeding Hearts couldn't even deal with 50 illegals who were sent there. That was too much. Fast-track them over to Boston. And Democrats' idea of addressing the border crisis is to just make it worse.
But you spouted it for a week, on and on, about how they're coming to kill you.
By a single, all-encompassing desire to determine whether or not God is real. The group's leaders realized that all they had to do to find out if a higher power is out there is to simply institute a caliphate, instigate a brutal war.
Case management, i.e. getting them their work permits as soon as possible. In practice, by the way, the work permits, the temporary protective status, that amounts to permanent amnesty. We talked about that last week with Stephen Miller. And it's all being done without a single vote cast, all done by executive fiat.
Fox News went on and on, Republican after Republican. This is a matter of the border. If we don't get that border secure, Hamas is coming to your neighborhood.
Now, how diabolical these people are. The White House sabotages the border so they can then come in and force amnesty on millions to address the crisis that they created. Again, all foisted upon the American public without their approval. Nobody wants this. All right, now you're wondering what made me cry.
And defeat the armies of Rome at a battle in Aleppo, Syria. As ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi said in 2013, if the end of the world unfolds as God foretold, with the anti-Messiah Dajjal emerging out of eastern Iran and slaughtering all but 5,000 Islamic fighters.
Magalorian is on a full all-caps alert.
Leaders, especially President Trump, has faced scrutiny, criticism, and people have always been trying to knock him down. We need to constantly pray for them and pray for our leaders, pray for our President Trump as he listens to God and does what he says, watches his hand move and do what he does. Listen again. But if it is of God, you will not be able to overthrow them, or else you may even be found fighting against God. Amen.
Then they'll know for sure that the Lord exists and they can rest easy. But if such actions do not cause Jesus to return...
The female's claiming that the landlord has the child in another room and apparently is either stabbing or has stabbed the child.
Authorities have now opened a federal hate crimes investigation. The local sheriff saying in a statement, both victims in this brutal attack were targeted by the suspect due to them being Muslim and the ongoing Middle Eastern conflict involving Hamas and the Israelis. Outrage erupting over the brutal crime, illustrating why federal officials are worried about growing threats.
He paid the price for the atmosphere of hate.
Zuba now facing murder, attempted murder, and hate crime charges.
And already, hate crimes are skyrocketing. And in this case, some guy who watched 24 hours of Fox News. It only took about 4 days for him to walk downstairs and stab a 6-year-old boy to death.
Democrats wanted us all to believe that January 6th was really almost the end of America. There were some criminals, obviously, we talked about at the time, who needed prosecuting for sure that day, but nothing compares to the coast-to-coast devastation that is being caused by Biden's purposeful opening of our border. Illegals committing vile crimes, even murder, and others busted for DUI, like this upstanding individual, a 28-year-old named Lenny Rodriguez Cruz, who allegedly rammed an NYPD squad car, then bit off a piece of a sergeant's finger while he was in a holding cell.
Fox News is culpable here. It's this exact same bullshit that led to people suddenly not believing in vaccines, that led to people believing that there was some kind of a great cabal that had somehow taken over our elections. Fox News called for that boy to be removed from America.
So every murder, every rape, every injury to an innocent American, every tax dollar spent on an illegal, every child trafficked, every cartel kingpin who collects his next million, all of it is on Biden and the Democrats. And that's the angle.
And surprise, surprise, one of their viewers was just creative enough to know how to do it.
And join in jihad just in time to impale Dajjal on a spear and save Islam.
Have members of Hamas crossed the southern border into the United States? Well, that's what former President Trump said on Truth Social the other day, saying the same people that raided Israel are pouring into the U.S. through our totally open southern border. Is this right? No, actually, first off, the border is not totally open. Secondly, the Department of Homeland Security told us there's no evidence that Hamas poses any threat to the U.S. and is much less crossing the southern border. It's actually extremely rare for terrorists from any group to do that. Since 1975, 9 foreign-born terrorists have entered the U.S. illegally, and of those, only 3 did so by crossing the southern border, and they were all children at the time. You can see their ages there. This is all according to a report by the Cato Institute. They're a libertarian group that tracks this sort of stuff. The group found that 13 terrorists did enter the U.S. by seeking asylum, which is a legal process, but none of them sought asylum at the southern border specifically, and none of them had any known ties to Hamas. Here's what the author of this report told a congressional committee just last month.
The title of this hearing is Terrorist Entry Through the Southwest Border. When I first heard that was the title, my reaction was, what terrorist entry through the Southwest border? 0 people have been murdered in attacks committed by terrorists who entered as illegal immigrants.
Trump isn't just wrong about Hamas entering the U.S. He completely misrepresented the situation at the border and how terrorists have historically entered the U.S. That's why the Truth and Meter rates this claim pants on fire. Read the full fact check at WREL.com.
It makes you cry for them, makes you weep for our country.
This little boy here, stabbed to death 26 times. Think Fox News is going to run that story? Do you think Fox News is going to run that story?
If it were a Muslim judge, would you also feel like they wouldn't be able to treat you fairly because of that policy of yours?
It's possible, yes. Yeah, that would be possible, absolutely.
Isn't there sort of a tradition, though, in America that we don't judge people by who their parents were, where they came from?
I'm not talking about tradition. I'm talking about common sense, okay?
Because if they are, it's right here.
I like how they couldn't mic it well either. They don't want anyone to hear this.
I suspect their version will be different. I suspect there'll be no version at all. I'm Zachariah Lone Star Liberal. Let's get it together, y'all, and vote out the right-wing government.
Are you concerned that you might be stoking more racial violence or more racial discord?
After these 2 brothers beat a sleeping homeless man in Boston, one of them telling police, Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported. The victim was in the country legally. And this Cleveland man attacked his African-American neighbors with a knife and then tells police Donald Trump will fix them because they are scared of Donald Trump. And watch this video from Gainesville, Florida. A Latino man is working outside of his convenience store when he says a stranger suddenly bashes him in the head. Moments later, the victim describing the attack.
Hit me in my back of my head, bro. This is for Trump. I think my rhetoric is it brings people together.
Could happen to America because our country has been invaded by millions of people.
And vote out the right-wing governments. They are destroying us. I'm Zachariah Lone Star Liberal. Y'all take it easy. And please like and subscribe. It really does help out my channel.
Even before entering the White House, Trump recognized the power of a commander-in-chief's words.
The irresponsible rhetoric of our president, who has used the pulpit of the presidency to divide us by race and color, has made America a more dangerous environment than, frankly, I have ever seen.
Once in office, Trump insisted he deserves no such blame.
Do you think that you bear any responsibility for moderating your language when it comes to that?
No, I don't. I think my language is very nice.
Then ISIS will simply call it a day and live with the fact that there is no God.